All right, well, let's call it to order and get started, so. Rachel? Where's Rachel?
Hiding out over.
Oh, there she is. He's hiding in the back. Would you mind to call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Russ Rose.
Here.
Mr. Scott Trees.
Here.
Mr. Jim Silliman. Mr. Keith Griffey.
Here.
Mr. Arthur Jones.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scott Fleming. Mr. Mike Heitenshoe. Mr. Jeremy Rainey.
Here.
Mr. Jordan Basham. Mr. Wesley Sidnor. Ms. Stephanie Laughlin. Ms. Nicole Ruffolo. Here. Mr. Tom Doyle. Mr. Pete Hedges. Mr. Melvin Phoenix. Mr. Keith Morris. Mr. Jody Bramblett.
Here.
Mr. Neil Martindale. Mr. Jim Hoskins. Ms. Diana Arnold. Mr. Mark Bates. Mr. Terry Roach and or Mr. Caleb Nab. All right.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
So you have in your packets the minutes from the January 9th meeting. And if you've had an opportunity to look at those, we would accept a motion to approve.
I do want to make one note on those, Rachel. On the last page, it says the council decided to elect Arthur Jones as vice chairman. And then it says Mr. Basham moved to approve Kevin Gibson. So that should be Kevin Gibson as our vice chairman.
Oh.
I know Arthur would have loved to do it again. I just want to make that correction.
Next year.
Year off.
I make motion. Thank you, Jeremy. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. The minutes are approved. So we've got several guests today. We've got Amber Hawkins, Division of Water. And Amber's got a presentation for us. Gonna tell us about where we can get some money, maybe?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out where was the best spot. I think I'm gonna go back here so y'all can stare that way. I'll be back here.
Okay.
Alright. Okay, guys, so I'm Amber Hawkins, as he introduced me. I'm the Salt River Basin Coordinator with the Kentucky Division of Water. And I'll be kind of talking a little bit about watershed planning and the 319H grant funding. So the outline for today is, I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about what a basin coordinator does, my main role, the Clean Water Act that also gives us that 319 funding, types of stream pollution.
Hold on a second, I just gotta share the screen so everybody can. The presentation.
Thank you, Greg.
There we go. Watershed planning, then the 319H grant funding, and then I'll finish with some projects that were funded by the 319 in the Salt River watershed. Okay, a basin coordinator. So according to our website, a basin coordinator serves as a facilitator for agency activities and as a point of contact for local organizations interested in addressing clean water issues. So what does that mean? So we match local organizations with experts. Obviously, our main concern is water quality. We want to have clean water, right? So our communities may reach out to us. They may be interested in getting some tourism in there, but before we can do any of that, we really need to know how the water quality is. Is this good for primary and secondary recreation? Flood mitigation. Yesterday, I was just in Mount Washington, and they have an older community that is having continual flooding. And so one of the things we're trying to address is some green infrastructure, right? Outdoor recreation, like I said, a lot of communities want to get some of that tourism, some movement in there. So setting up a blue water trail would be something they might be interested in, or some kind of other water recreation. We match local organizations with funding. Of course, we have our 319 grant, but you know, that can only go so far. So a good part of what we do is try to match communities with other additional funding, whether that comes from building partnerships with NRCS or Division of Conservation or EPA. They have additional grants that we try to set people up with. Education and outreach. So I actually have different hats. One of mine is also the education and outreach coordinator. So I do a lot of trainings, and I also try to get out to the community and teach adults and youth about their watershed and how they can get involved. So this includes going to schools, field days, setting up at festivals, Earth Days. I'm pretty busy through March through April. We assist with watershed planning, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. And ultimately, the biggest part is listening and learning to a community, because they're gonna know what their needs are better than we do. So just a little bit about the Clean Water Act. I won't bore you too much. So in the late 1960s and early 70s, citizens started becoming a little concerned about their streams and waters. They were continually catching on fire. This is the Cuyahoga River in Ohio. So Congress made laws in 1972 to protect surface water. This is known as the Clean Water Act. EPA is responsible for overseeing the requirements of the Clean Water Act. In the late 1980s, EPA began to focus on the impacts of non-point source or runoff pollution that was being carried into the waterways and preventing states from achieving the fishable, swimmable, and drinkable requirements. Non-point source is addressed in section 319H of the Clean Water Act. This funding that is provided by EPA to fix non-point source is often called the 319 funding. Next. So there's two types of pollution. There's a point source and non-point source. So a point source is a single identifiable source, such as municipal, industrial, and other wastewater facilities that directly discharge from an outfall. So basically, you think of a pipe and you think the water coming out. That's a discharge point. This requires a facility to obtain a Kentucky Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or KPDS permit, which you all are probably aware of. Non-point source is a source of pollutant entering a body of water with an unknown origin. This could be coming from multiple sites at once. This could be sediment, oil and gas, road salts, pet waste, livestock manures, and others carried into the stream during a rain event or snow or ice melts. And as you can see in the photo, there's all that sediment, that milky chocolate that's all flowing into the stormwater drains. Next. So a little bit about watershed planning. So what is a watershed plan? It's a holistic approach that considers both point and non-point source pollution, water quality, community health, and economic interests related to water. Why would it be important? It takes a holistic approach to managing water and watershed health, incorporates community and economic health interests such as flooding and outdoor recreation, helps to organize the problems, goals, and objectives, prioritizes actions for remediation or protection, provides 319 funding possibilities, and provides points to the state revolving fund and cost share applications. Thanks. So there are 6 steps to a watershed planning process to make it successful. 1, we always say build partnerships. Partners are those who share your concern and are committed to helping with the plan long term. Partners include stakeholders and concerned citizens. This would be like building partnerships with your health departments or public school systems or libraries. Characterize your watershed. This is to get a better understanding of the impacts in the watershed, the causes and sources of the impacts, and to quantify pollutant loads. You kind of know, is it an urban setting or are you in an agricultural area? Finalize goals and identify solutions. So what do we want to happen as a result of this watershed plan? The goals need to be achievable, financially and technically viable, and measurable. And then you need to identify solutions. You do this by identifying your best management practices, or we call them BMPs. There are many types of BMPs, from agricultural stream buffers and urban stormwater controls to homeowner education programs for on-site septic system maintenance. Design and implementation program. This will help you distill down those BMPs to a realistic plan to improve water quality. Each BMP selected, action items should be developed. Action items are the actual steps the team is planning on taking to get that practice up and moving. These steps are to plan, install, maintain, and monitor the success of the BMP. Implementing the watershed plan. After the team has identified what needs to be done and how to do it, it's time to take action. Taking action is advocating for your plan, securing and managing financial resources, implementation functions and roles, and being able to adapt to challenges. And finally, measure progress and make adjustments. To know if you're moving toward or accomplishing your goals, you must measure your progress. You can do this through milestones, improvements in the watershed health, and improvements in water quality through success monitoring. Thanks. So this is what you all want to know, the 319H grant funding. By amendment to the Federal Clean Water Act in 1987, the Section 319H grant program was established to provide funding for efforts to reduce non-point source pollution. The funds are used for either programmatic, such as the development of a watershed plan and education and outreach, or implementation work in a watershed with an EPA-approved watershed plan, such as implementing those BMPs that I was talking about. These funds can be used to pay for 60% of the total cost for each project. A 40% non-federal match is required. This match could come in different ways, some volunteer hours, office space, supplies, in kind, and we're currently working out land easements. Those who are eligible are municipalities, community groups, nonprofits, colleges and universities, and governmental agencies. In the fall, we put out a call for letters of intent, or LOIs. The LOI is intended to let the Division of Water know that the entity is planning on applying for programmatic or implementation funds. The application is generally due in February and should include a project summary and background, detailed objectives, a milestone schedule, a list of project partners with letters of support, and a comprehensive budget. It's quite a bit. The Division of Water staff can assist with the application and make sure all parts are completed correctly. After all applications have been received by the deadline, the Division of Water and outside partners go through a review and ranking process. Those that rank the highest received all or partial monies requested. And we just got finished. It is a very long day. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about the actual 319 grant?
Do you know how many projects are currently slated for Salt River watershed?
I know how many put in for it. I don't know how many were awarded. So we actually had 6 that had put in the Salt River. So I don't know. I haven't heard the results yet, but football.
Is that kind of average per year? How many do you see applications per year usually?
Well, this is actually my first year.
Okay,
So
awesome.
Joanna, do you know how many?
So in terms of just the Salt River Basin or in total for applications?
I guess just for our Salt River Basin.
Salt is usually one of the, Salt and Licking are our 2 most active
Okay.
basins that apply. We can pull some numbers on it, but I would say the Salt probably averages around 4 or 5 every application season.
Great. Awesome.
For anyone wishing to get involved, Oldham County's been involved in this for years, and Becca Truman, who's here, was our watershed coordinator, but Division of Water is extremely helpful in any part of this program.
Thanks, Jim.
And the last slide, do you have any other questions? Well, like I said, I'm actually fairly new at this, so some of this is actually Becca's doing, so, I'll talk a little bit about what happened in 2023, some of the projects that were completed. So Oldham County Conservation District and Oldham County Health Department, like I said, they were building those partnerships, paired together to do a wastewater system education workshop and did a repair and maintenance cost share program that was a 90-10 cost share. They also, and that's up on the right, the Oldham County Conservation District also did live stake plantings for a riparian buffer along multiple sites on Curry's Fork. Louisville MSD has completed 1 watershed plan for Beargrass Creek and hired a watershed coordinator. And she's currently implementing the watershed plan. We're also currently working on a plan for Mills Creek, and we just completed a very successful stream cleanup. Trimble County Judge Executive wants to do a watershed plan for Hardy Creek and applied for the 319 grant this year. The Division of Water is also using drone flights to survey Hardy Creek to assess the bank erosion and flooding issues, and that's kind of, you can see that in the lower left there. That, right there where the bank is where the road, it's pretty bad right there on that particular road. Lastly, Anderson County Conservation District implemented ag BMPs from their watershed plan for Sulphur Creek, installing over 1,200 feet of rotational fencing to keep cattle out of the stream. We have a lot of projects. I think we're doing great. We'll live. Question?
All right. Thank you so much, Amber.
So we have gotten solicited quite frequently here lately about assisting in watershed plans, and we're pretty busy right now as a division, but I just wanted to bring Amber in to be able to present, to have the technical assistance there. Jennifer Wilson in our division has helped out with the Trimble County, as you know, Becca Truman and I have quite a few projects in the works together that we're working on. But she was integral in all this with the North Curry Fork watershed and getting the 319. So we haven't been, since we were so inundated with a lot of cleaner water, SRF and other stuff, we haven't been too active in actual watershed planning as a division, but that's something that as cleaner water kind of slows down, we're looking to kind of be able to help out and assist with more with Division of Waters, guidance. So that's why I'm really wanted to have her as guest speaker. Hope everybody got something out of that. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to, reach out to them or I, and we can, get started on that.
Amber, total annual budget for grant funding for the Salt River watershed would be in the ballpark of?
It's gonna be dependent upon applications, so everything, we get a lump sum from EPA, we make about 1.5 million available every cycle. And then that's gonna be dispersed amongst whichever applications rank the highest in the process. And each of those applications, we've funded up to 400,000 each project, as low as 45,000 a project, so it kind of varies depending upon the work that needs to get done, who's doing it, where, and time frame. So not a very direct answer for you, just because it's so,
That's what I
dependent
need.
upon what
Hot
comes
is
in.
1.5 million.
Hot is 1.5.
Arthur's going.
Yeah, it's different on that.
That's why we work on getting other funding to, look at other possible ways. Because we want to get as many projects funded as possible.
There's definitely a need, for
Right.
sure.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah. And as water management coordinator, we don't have a pool of funds that's earmarked specifically for stormwater. Right? In the portal, it's WS or SX, and stormwater goes in wastewater. But a lot of times, past 3-4 years, I'm finding a lot more stormwater projects on the horizon, and that's why trying to navigate this, and definitely really appreciate you all's assistance while we do that. So that will segue kind of into Louisville MSD. We have our next guest speaker, Wolfie from Louisville MSD. They've been, tackling their stormwater and watershed planning efforts. So he's here to kind of discuss what they're doing and how they're being proactive with that.
You only get me for a few minutes and then I'll turn it over to somebody that's more. So my name is Wolfie Miller. Stephanie and Wes would be here today, but they're actually out in DC advocating for some other money too. So, significant goals of having to deal with me and Nicole today. I'll start off by talking briefly about some of the work that we started almost 10 years ago. I just realized, actually, this has been going on a lot longer than I realized, but we put together what we call a critical repair and reinvestment plan. So it looks across everything that MSD does, it tries to plan for our 20-year horizon at that point. So let's see. So, and then Nicole, like I said, she'll get up here. She'll actually talk about the things that we've done for stormwater, trying to find some prioritizing the work that we need to do, and also finding funding for that. So, next slide, please. Other way. MSD, always have to remind people, obviously, Metropolitan Sewer District, but really, we have been going by either hashtag at times, but 3 utilities in one. So we try to provide services to the community for wastewater collection and treatment, obviously. So we have 3,200 miles of sewer within Jefferson County. We also recently expanded more regionally to Oldham and Fuller counties for some infrastructure in each of those counties. So we have 5 regional plants in Jefferson County and also now, about a dozen smaller package wastewater treatment plants in those other counties that we have, taken over to where we manage and provide services there. For flood protection, we have about 26 miles of earthen levee and flood wall on 16 flood pump stations that protect Jefferson County. And then also obviously stormwater drainage management. So there are 760 miles of streams within the county that most of them get to a flood pump station in order to be pumped out. So obviously those are integral to each other. Next slide, please. When we started our critical repair and reinvestment plan, like I said, it was in 2015. One of the things that we were noticing, and we had to go back and sort of make sure it matched with what we felt, but we looked at this chart. I felt like it was always very impactful because it shows the number of days in each calendar year that had rain events that were at least 3 inches or more. And what we found were, I think there were 23 events between 1948 and 2003, and then 17 in the most recent 20 years. So we all felt like there were, and we were able to show that there were more of those days, but an increased frequency of intense or extreme storms that we were experiencing. So when we looked at planning ahead for the future, it was trying to become more resilient for what we expected to be that change. The first thing we did was looked at what our design manual says. So those bars in blue, that's the TP40, which dates back to 1979 for sizing for storm events and return intervals. NOAA Atlas 14 is also available. It isn't in our design manual, but that goes through 2000. So the first thing we did was update all that same information with all the same logic with the new updated information through 2014. Like I said, when we started, and what we found was that while there wasn't much change in smaller storm events, smaller return intervals, once you start creeping up, the change is pretty drastic as far as what you need to size to and design to in order to provide that same level of service to the community. Next slide, please. So what we have here is that there was about $500 million worth of projects in our flood protection system, and another over $1 billion worth of identified need for our stormwater facilities. And there might be an animation on here, but as you've probably heard a lot, let's talk about a lot, but most of our priority for MSD had been regulatory compliance with overflow abatement. And that's what we spent all of our money on at the time. That's what we're still trying to complete now. So while we were able to identify additional need for stormwater and flood protection, it's still trying to stretch the same dollar across that so we can provide services for the community. So limited finances there. And that's what you'll realize as I talk about this is that my background is mostly in wastewater collection, overflow abatement, and flood protection. So we have to have folks like Nicole come in here with a fresh set of eyes and to help us do this for stormwater more effectively. One thing, we talk about resiliency that you all know, but as rain falls, it doesn't distribute evenly across the community at any given time. So obviously, impacted vastly differently with intensity, duration, frequency, or location of our large infrastructure assets. One of the things that we have embarked upon in the past few years, also stormwater, but across our entire assets, are a more comprehensive asset management program, a strategic asset management plan, and then more targeted tactical asset management plans for stormwater. And then, like I said, without having a significant rate increase that we even proposed in 2017 to help pay for everything we identified, we have been going through and trying to prioritize and develop a more strategic approach for alternative funding. So that's where the goal comes in.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Cola. Like what he said, I'll talk about funding and stormwater trials and tribulations. He's probably more accurate than anything. So when we kind of started our more comprehensive stormwater master planning, I mean, obviously stormwater has always been at the forefront of everybody's minds, and it's actively raining outside, so what do you do with that? But like Wolfie said, our money ended up going towards wastewater with our consent decree, so trying to balance that. So now that we have a little bit more breathing room in our budget, and we can start thinking about stormwater a little bit more, what do we wanna do? What is our level of service wanna be? How are we gonna prioritize where we focus our efforts? Obviously, we can't just do everything at once like we would like to do unless anybody has a couple $1 billion, in the couch cushions, that'd be great. So we were looking at, what rainfall do we wanna care about for our level of service? What's the structural flooding, that we wanna try and protect to? Is it low, low adjacent grade, first floor, basement, roadways? What roads do we care about? Highways, arterials, collector roads, water quality, how does that impact? And then social vulnerability and those parameters, who is at the most risk when it's actively raining? How are we gonna help those communities? Slide. So we took a step back and tried to figure out how we best wanted to prioritize within the county where we were gonna start first. So we broke the county down into 71 subbasins. We thought that was a manageable chunk, and we have 11 watersheds. We couldn't do an entire one at one time. It's just too much money. So how do we break that up? Big enough to be more regional, but small enough that we can afford. So 71 seemed like a sweet spot, and that tried to work with topography here. And then we were looking at the consequence and likelihood of where those impacts would be the most great. So for the consequences, our population density, building density, SBI scores, different building infrastructure, fire, police, EMS, those types of facilities, hospitals, schools, daycares, things of that nature. And then for the likelihood, where are the impacts going to be? We looked at floodplains, both FEMA floodplain, we looked at our combined system floodplain and the First Street data floodplain, so we incorporated all of those. We were looking at customer calls where people call in saying they're having flood impacts, RL and SRL properties, water quality data that we had available to us, and then where are those flood insurance policies that kind of indicate where problems could be in the community, and looked at all of those, scored those, and came up with this risk-based score for each of the 71 subbasins within the county. Next slide, please. So after we kind of did that analysis, we started with number one. What's the highest risk watershed that we found out of those 71 subbasins? And we took that as our pilot, and it was in the Northern Ditch watershed. So that was kind of the first place we looked, and we started developing alternative analysis solutions, and then trying to find money to implement all of those great solutions that we had just developed. But at the same time, we were using that also as the pilot to try and help inform that level of service decision that we made. Is it reasonable to meet the level of service that we want to within the community? Does that fit within our budget? How does that all kind of work together for stormwater quantity and quality? How are we gonna manage all of those factors all at the same time? Next. So that comes to the money part, right? How are we gonna pay for all of these things, both the planning and the implementation? So like Wilkie said, we have both the flood protection system that's along the Ohio River and our inland stormwater management. So we have been slightly successful getting money with the Corps for our flood protection system. We were awarded $1 million for planning, engineering, and design, but we still have quite a chunk that we need to take care of. Over $2 million in investment across the levee and 16 flood pump stations that we need to upgrade that infrastructure. So just still trying to, find ways to help fund all of those efforts. One of those being Patty's Run. If you live anywhere near Louisville, you've probably heard of the Patty's Run flood pump station and the work that we have going on there. It's a $230 million project. We have been successful getting some SRF loans, and we did use some of our first round ARPA money to help fund that, but it's only scratched the surface of need for that project with 12% funding. So that's still a really large funding gap for extremely large project that we have going on right now. As Amber mentioned, we have a 319 grant, 2 319 grants. They were about 400,000 together, I think. One for the Middleport, Beargrass Creek watershed, and then the other in Mill Creek. We have been successful getting some FMA funding through FEMA for some of our sub-watershed modeling. I fingers crossed that our latest application also receives funding so that we can continue that. And then because the criteria for the cleaner water grants was so unrestricted, we were able to use most of our round two funds to help implement some of those larger stormwater projects that we had in the community that just weren't gonna happen, without that money. They were just too big for the amount of money that we have, right now. And then the last bucket that we've relentlessly tried to get money for and have not been successful yet is through FEMA's BRIC program. We've applied every year that it has been available and have received $0. So again, fingers crossed for local MSD for this year's round, for some of those that we have submitted. But one big hurdle, for that is the building codes. They put a large emphasis on resiliency in that BRIC program, and unfortunately Kentucky is still in the 2015 with our building codes, and they say that it's too old, you get 0 points in that category. So, just trying to get as many free points as we possibly can. That's anybody in the state is missing out on those types of points, regardless of your project. I'm not saying that's the reason why we're not getting funding, but it probably wouldn't hurt if we got some extra 15 points on the application. So anybody's looking to, top building codes, that'd be great. But that's kind of our funding profile that we have for our stormwater program. I mean, we've been successful in some of the ways, but happy to hear about all of the other great funding opportunities. It sounds like the Division of Water might be able to help us with. So with that, I think that's all that I have. Yes. So I'll take any questions on those really quick.
Oh, perfect. Perfect segue, too. These segues are smooth as ice.
You did a really good job setting this agenda.
It's all about the funding.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Nicole.
Any questions for Nicole?
That risk analysis, that you all developed for those like sub watershed areas, is that like a standardized thing, or is that something that MSD sort of like designed itself?
Yeah, we designed it. We did, model it after our hazard mitigation plan, sort of the, mathematical part of it. But we created the, priorities and then ranked them with their scoring that we felt were the most important to the community. And then obviously we have a lot of people who've lived here for a long time. They're much smarter than me and know our problem areas. And we did gut checks to make sure that the risk-based priorities matched up with where we felt like we saw a lot of problems, and they fit pretty well. We are gonna go through updating it this year to, incorporate any new floodplain data or, anything like that that's changed in the last couple of years. We did that back in 2021, so we could probably use a refresh, but we kind of created it on our own.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm just curious.
Other questions for Nicole or Bobby? All right, thank you all. All right, we'll just continue right on down with the funding.
All the money conversation.
Exactly. So sewer overflow and stormwater reuse municipal grant.
It's quite the mouthful, which is
Is
why
it?
we call it OSG. Hi, everyone, Joanna Ashford. I am the Watershed Management Branch Manager, also quite the mouthful. And we recently, as of the last year, started this program. This has been funded from EPA since 2020. A little bit of a lag time in getting down to the state. That kind of has been the pattern recently with EPA just because of the amount of funding coming through. So we were able to get our hands on this money last year. We had a really quick turnaround and pretty high dollar amount to spend. I say that not in comparison to SRF, but in comparison to 319. We had about $2.8 million to spend really quickly. So our priority last year was just getting the money in and getting it spent in accordance with the guidelines from EPA. Those guidelines have changed a little bit to where we now have to do an open call for applications. So before I get ahead of myself, as you mentioned, sewer overflow and stormwater reuse municipal grant, also called OSG. So think about overflow, stormwater, and grant. And because we work at the state and we really love our acronyms, we're creating the Green Infrastructure Assistance Program. So, and some people are calling it GIOP. I don't know. We will figure that one out later, but that's what we're here to talk about today. So in terms of eligibility, this one is restricted just to municipal entities. So 319 has the ability to go through nonprofits or universities. This one is strictly municipal entities. There is a strong priority given to rural populations and disadvantaged populations. So those also kind of get a lot of questions of what classifies what is what. So population less than 10,000 is rural and would receive those points. And then we would look at a system or community or project based on the CGIS tool or EJ screen. And I say that kind of broadly because I get lots of questions about what community, who's impacted, how do we use this tool? And that kind of is the continuing conversation around Justice 40 and how do we implement Justice 40. So that is a case-by-case basis of working with the system, working with the applicant to figure out what is the project and or who's going to benefit from the project too as part of that calculation. Eligible projects, if you'll go back to where we were, we are putting a strong emphasis on stormwater management with these funds. There's a lot of money right now out there for gray infrastructure, and we've seen a lot of green infrastructure projects that have gone through the SRF program and have struggled to get funding because they just can't get enough points to rank high enough. So we are dedicating this whole pot of money to green infrastructure to try and see some of those funded. Good, I'm glad that's the reception.
That is it.
There is a wide umbrella to what OSG, according to EPA, can be funded, but we really, because of the amount of money that we have, if you'll go back to where we were, there's not a lot of overhead coverage for us to manage this program. And so we have put a minimum cost amount on these projects just to ensure that we're not carrying 50 projects in 1 year. So minimum of 150, which doesn't seem to be a problem for some projects talked about today. Now go ahead. So green infrastructure, I think this room is pretty familiar with that term. But just in case you were looking, we have no gray infrastructure. We're looking strictly at green infrastructure that's going to be looking specifically at stormwater. So whether that's pavement, landscaping, infiltration, anything to do with stormwater management that's handled in a nature-based solution is what we would like to see. We're open to a conversation. So if there's something else that you see missing from this list, we're happy to have that conversation to see if it would qualify. So into the meat of the program, this year, yes, that's a correct number. The number has kind of changed a bit from EPA, but we've got about $1.4 million. We are currently open right now for letters of intent. We're doing very similar to the 319 program. So what we're asking for any municipalities that are interested in applying, sending us a letter of intent. We have a form on our website. That just opens the door for conversation. Let us know what you're planning on doing. We take a look at the budget, take a look at the project, the area, have that conversation about whether it qualifies for rural or disadvantaged. And then we go from there. Once we get through that process, there's then an application. Once we receive applications, communication stops since we will have to rank those. And then we go through that process of ranking, sending out who gets money, who doesn't, and then working on that MOA to get the project up and running. We're looking at projects to be about 2 years for implementation. So quick in and out. As far as I know, in communication with EPA, as of today, the 9th at 2:09, this program seems to be similar to 319, where we expect this to be an annual pot, not necessarily associated with bills. So we are hoping to incorporate this in perpetuity, but again, as of today. So that's kind of our timeline of what we're looking for. So the biggest date for you all to pay attention to is that May 1st, getting those letters of intent into us so we can start that conversation. I do have a QR code up there if you want to look at all of the different information. Dale Booth, who wasn't able to be with us today, has been instrumental in creating tons of resources. There's a whole guidance package out there. She's put together a story map that has all of the information that you could need about the program, as well as resources about how we will rank and score those projects. My information's up there. I'm also hanging around, so if you have questions or have them now, I'm happy to answer them. Bear with me, it's a new program and we're figuring this out.
So questions for Joanne? Nicole?
Yeah, this money have, any of the federal restrictions on it with Build America, Buy America,
All of the above. We just went through the contracting process for this last year, and, they said, oh, this is very similar to what we see with SRF funding. So yeah, all of the NEPA.
NEPA review too.
Yep.
You need help in administering that, you know.
You know the guy?
Great question. Thank you. I'll add that.
Yeah, I have a question. The 1.4 million, is that for the entire state or just the KIPDA region?
Nope, that is for the entire state.
And then, Spencer County has a population of about 20,000, but Taylorsville is under 10,000, so they would qualify and we wouldn't, correct?
So I should clarify, everybody is, eligible. It's just in terms of priority for ranking. So similar to SRF, there's points associated with different pieces of the application. So they would receive the rural points, or the disadvantage points, depending upon how their CJS scores ranked out. So they would receive additional points. Everybody is eligible, any municipality is eligible. It's just whether or not they would receive those priority points or not. I didn't fail to mention that there's no match requirements for projects that are within a rural and disadvantaged area. So EPA has put kind of a sliding scale with our cost, our price match for projects up to 20% for projects that are not in a rural or disadvantaged area, and then down to 0 for projects that are. So sorry, should have clarified that one.
All right, thank you. Would you guys send this presentation, send it out to everyone on this meeting? I'd like to send it to the city of Taylorsville for
Yes,
them to
sir.
look at.
I'll make sure to do that, Judge.
All right, thank you.
So Joanna, when you say municipalities, you are including things like stormwater districts? Okay,
Municipalities or municipal entities.
okay.
Those are my 2 qualifiers.
Special districts included in that as well?
Need more information.
Special water districts, so
Yes,
special utility districts, so, okay,
I would assume so. I will
Okay.
double check that within the guidance, but I would say yes.
okay. Typically, the definition of city or municipalities is cities, but yeah, but sounds like this is outside of that as well.
Yeah, it had municipal entities, so we actually just went under contract with the Mercer County Sanitation District.
Okay,
So, yes,
enough said. All right,
perfect.
great. Just wanted to clarify. Yeah, additional, questions for Joanne? Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
No problem.
All right,
That wraps up our presentations there.
yeah. So Justin, we got some.
Just
new-
one, and it's even applicable to all the presentations. It is a stormy stormwater day. We got your galoshes on. We're continuing on stormwater.
Yeah.
We just have one, wastewater project here that needs council approval. And it's a little MSD, it's their drainage response initiative. Nicole, did you wanna do that one? Stephanie said, I don't wanna throw you, I can do it if you want, but. Yeah, are you familiar with it? I mean, do you
Yeah,
feel comfortable doing it? Cause okay.
We, this project is a collection of stormwater projects in the county, and we need to do a NEPA review for it. And they're requiring us to have an SX number to do our e-clearing house, so. That's why it's on here, but it's basically just several stormwater projects doing some, yard swales, some gutter improvements, at a collection of spots throughout the county. So, that's that.
Okay, so we discuss a motion. Jeremy, have a second? Scott, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Super. You're up.
I do not have much, so we are going full steam into cleaner water as well. Ryan and I are, if anybody has any questions for us, let us know. We have pretty much gotten every environmental review, complete. There's a few outstanding, but, for the most part, all those are done. All of our cleaner water projects are now under contract. We don't have to worry about losing any of those funding, for that. So, I do want to welcome to our Regional Water Management Council meeting today, Mr. Donald Shire and Ms. Debbie Landrum with the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. Thank you so much for being here. I know you all are more than busy, so thank you so much for making time out to be here today. But for cleaner water, very proud of our division's effort and what we've done so far and helping out with administering all those. The light at the end of the tunnel is glimmering there. It's kind of like the eclipse yesterday. I can kind of see it, but there's still some something blocking it. But we're carrying on. SRF admin's going well for all of our SRF projects as well. We've been working with Shepherdsville here on their 11.9 million that we got for them and getting all their application squared away. And we're hoping with Dustin Duncan with our division, he's worked really hard on an economic development administration grant to help fund that as well. So hopefully we'll hear back from that next month sometime, knowing if we'll get that or not. So we're staying busy with cleaner water and SRF, finishing up all my system visits. We're about 3/4 of the way done with those. So I'll be reaching out to you guys. I think there's about 4 or 5 more of those outside of Louisville Water and Louisville MSD that I need to take care of. But yeah, and then the Kentucky Wastewater Association is having their conference next month. It's going to be in Owensboro on May 7th, 8th, and 9th. So always try to let everybody know about that. It's always a quality conference. So if you guys haven't already registered for that, members 300 and operator non-members 380. So just want to let you guys be aware of that. And I don't really have too much else, Chairman. Just
Thank you.
that's not all I got.
So brings us down to county updates. Anybody have anything they need to bring up from a county perspective? And any other business? Debbie, you or Don, everything you want to bring up?
Guys, just remember, if you have overrun, get with me. I do have that supplemental with clean water, so
Okay.
get with me. I'm trying to spend it.
We will take it off your hands gladly.
No,
You know, if you got anything unusual, just get with me.
does that take another resolution and everything?
It does, yeah. You know, you gotta have loopholes.
We're used to those by now, though, right, Jeremy?
That's right.
Okay. Any other business that anybody needs to bring up? All right, seeing none, we'll accept a motion to adjourn. Motion. And Arthur, anybody have a second? Mr. Bates? I thought I saw you raise your hand.
It was-